the thing that he said was also politically so wrong. In response to Sunak saying we're fighting for our values in the last 48 hours, as if it was the Nazis coming, when we're literally fighting to get our values back. Boris is the man with no values. And then he said it'll be don't let the Putinistas usher in the Corbynistas. He's saying it'll be the most left-wing government ever. No, as surely it's been observed many times on your show, I'm sure, but it occurred to me anyway. The bigger the majority, the more right-wing the government will be. If Keir has a supermajority, he can do what he wants, which is basically nothing. Whereas if he had a majority of 50, he'd have to listen to the left. So I think what we're getting is blue Labour.
At a rally in central London, the former Prime Minister called Nigel Farage a Kremlin crawler and warned Tory voters that Labour would whack up taxes. The last-ditch attempt to muster support is a reaction to analysis by the Times suggesting just 130,000 votes in 100 seats could decide the result of the election. We had Mel Stride on earlier for the government. He was basically conceding defeat and conceding actually a trouncing. He was talking about the largest landslide in modern political history. Jane, Boris Johnson trying to help Rishi Sunak out right at the end in order to stop the defeat being too great, or trying to rub his nose in it knowing he won't be blamed for the scale of the defeat? Rishi's carrying the can. What did you make of his intervention?
Well, Boris is always about Boris, isn't he? I mean, I have to say I did love the phrase pregnant with horrors. He has a very good turn of phrase, but to channel Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman, I thought that was a huge mistake. I mean, people aren't idiots. They know that the two men don't like each other. It completely smacks of desperation. And I think they underestimate how many people are still very, very upset about Partygate, you know. And what have they done right before the night of the election? They've put a man on the stage that has just reminded everybody about Partygate. So yeah, I think it was a big mistake.
I think probably 90% of the people getting in touch with this morning. Do you think, Asma, 90%?
Yeah. But Gito Harry, obviously not one of them.
No, we had Gito Harry on saying this showed what a brilliant phrase maker he is and how forced it. I suppose the argument, Jane, would be, we'll get Giles' view on this as well, is that does it not show, though, what this campaign has not had? And that is someone standing every single day and giving it some, arguing for what they believe in or they not even what they believe in, making debating points, having a go, taking the fight to someone. That probably shows what this campaign hasn't had as well.
Yeah, I agree. But I think in the last couple of weeks, Rishi Sunak, and probably that's just because he's got a firework up his bum, has suddenly dug deep and found something that has not been there since October 2022 when he became Prime Minister. He's found a bit of fire in his belly, but it's too late. And of course, I don't particularly think that Keir Starmer's got any fire in his belly in terms of when you see him speaking, as he's been accused of being quite robotic. So it's not like, maybe Boris dreams of being up against Keir Starmer in a sort of a Trump-Biden kind of way, i.e. that it's an easy victory debate-wise, but I don't know. I think we're past all that, really. I think Boris this morning, yesterday, yeah, as I said, some of the phrases he comes up with is great, but I think we're past the point of good phrases now. We need solid governance.
And Boris Johnson was never really about solid governance, if he was about anything at all. Giles, what do you make of it, the intervention? What's the motivation behind this? Is there some legitimate attempt to stop the reform vote, or is he rubbing Rishi's nose in it a little bit, do you think?
I don't know. I mean, I imagine his motivation is the sudden realization that he's got 3 more children about to go through private school. And bloody hell, 20% on that really isn't funny. It's the only thing that's what I would be thinking if I had 3. And he obviously couldn't countenance them going to a state school. He's not looking and going, they may spend the 20%, as they say, on state education, and then I can get these 3 kids out for free and have more money to spend on, hookers and booze or whatever it is that Boris is into. So which is what a lot of sort of posh people are thinking, I think. So I think it's probably selfish. I think it's funny. I think it reminds, a bit like Jane said, I'm not bothered about, I don't care about Partygate. I had parties too. But I mean, you're reminded everything that was wrong with him. I think, first of all, he didn't get his hair done because he never does. And he's gone full kind of William Hartnell Doctor Who. He does look like he's arrived in a TARDIS from 1963 without a comb. And you're reminded of that because it's sort of grown and grown. And then the articulacy was in itself a flaw. You're reminded of that. When he said, it's sort of embarrassing when he says, I think, when he says Kremlin crawler, pregnant with whatever, he didn't actually get any Latin in, but it reminds you of the emptiness and vapidity. I was a Boris fan. I punched the air along with him in 2019 just to sort of get in the face of the Corbynistas. So, but I think he just reminds us about really what we're voting against, and I'm sure we all are. And it's sort of 10 more years in the wilderness. It's also the thing that he said was also politically so wrong in response to Sunak saying we're fighting for our values in the last 48 hours, as if it was the Nazis coming, when we're literally fighting to get our values back. Boris is the man with no values. And then he said it'll be don't let the Putinistas usher in the Corbynistas. He's saying it'll be the most left-wing government ever. No, as surely it's been observed many times on your show, I'm sure, but it occurred to me anyway. The bigger the majority, the more right-wing the government will be. If Keir has a supermajority, he can do what he wants, which is basically nothing. Whereas if he had a majority of 50, he'd have to listen to the left. So I think what we're getting is blue Labour. I think it's fine.
You had your own Johnsonian moment of phrase making, Giles. I'm sure you're not actually suggesting what Boris Johnson would use the money for, like other posh people. The point is that you're worried about. You think it's about private schools, not necessarily purchasing.
You're quite right. You're quite right. I was employing Johnsonian hyperbole to wittily satirize his opinion, and I absolutely do not think that that's what he does.
That's great stuff. That's what I thought,
Yeah. So Emma's got in touch. I am in what was a safe Tory seat is now predicted to turn. I can't understand why anyone is bothered about Partygate any longer. But Emma, a lot of people got in touch saying that they were. Richard, for example, I told my Conservative MP he lost my vote when he defended Boris over Partygate. None of the above wins, says Richard. So it does still matter to a lot of people. Now, it hasn't really been a campaign where there was much intellectual cut and thrust about policy. There was a bit about tax, but it was all a bit nebulous. Emblematic of the tone was the row about part-time Keir Starmer. He said that he aims to stop work at 6 on Friday to make sure he sees his children. That led to government ministers saying he would work a 4-day week, which was a bit of a leap. We have discussed this, but Giles, you're very keen to talk about this. There seems to be a huge disconnection between what he said and what the Conservatives thought he said.
I just thought how marvellous. Absolutely every parent in the land, regardless of their job, should knock off on a Friday to spend time with their kids. And the idea that Rishi Sunak would want to try and present someone as lazy because they prioritise family values in the same speech as saying our values are at stake. And if the values that are going to come in are the values that you fit your work around your family, but your first responsibility is to your children, then it's extraordinary. The Tories would just want to try and ignore that and not highlight it. Because I think it shows what a strong man he is.
Okay, Jane, go on.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of agree with Giles, really. And to be honest, also, aren't his kids just going to be up a flight of stairs? It's not like he's going to be flying off somewhere for the weekend to see them. It's literally just going up a flight of stairs at number 10 or number 11 or wherever they choose to live to have dinner with your family. Yeah. I mean, I think that is a bit of a nonsense. And of course, that people are criticising him for it. I think that's to be commended. Family life, a solid family life is the foundation for a lot of good things in life. And I mean, Rishi Sunak, I think relatively recently, I heard a clip yesterday of him being asked a while ago to name something that he admired about Keir Starmer. And he said that he finds a family work-life balance. So it's like, which is it?
Yeah.
And I think I interviewed Rishi Sunak recently, and I asked him about because his wife was interviewed, and she said that he wasn't around as much for their girls because obviously he's Prime Minister. And I asked him about that, and he was very, he said, yeah, she's right, and it's something that plays on me. I don't like that. So. I think it's something that everybody juggles, and and if there's a national crisis and there has to be a Cobra meeting or whatever, Keir Starmer's not going to go and have Friday night dinner. It's very simple.
I remember he said that to William Hague as well. Actually, he talked about how he wasn't really there for his daughters. Just a quick point, and this is probably a rubbish point, but I'm going to make it anyway, Jane. Has there been actually a little bit more honesty in this election campaign than there has previously. And you can say it's honesty for different reasons. It's manipulated honesty, perhaps. The Conservatives halfway through this campaign said, you know what, it looks like we're going to lose, which was, they were being honest, but they were also trying to do something else, but they were being honest. Keir Starmer says, I want to put my family first. Not family first, but I want to be there for my family. I want to do the job really well. But actually, you know what? I'm not going to work round the clock, night and day, tirelessly, all the other cliches, because I want to be a good parent. And I wonder,
Yeah,
Jane.
but there's honest and then there's honest. It's selective honesty, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I think anybody saying I want to spend more time or want to have one dinner a night with my kids.
But politicians would not have said that. But they wouldn't have said that 20
years.
years ago, would they? Maybe even 10 years ago, they might not have said that.
I don't know. I think David Cameron was very much of that ilk. But and don't forget he had his son Ivan as well at the time, who had, severe sort of special needs. So, but no, I mean, I think that stuff plays very, very well with the public. But on the same basis, if you say to Keir Starmer, are you going to raise capital gains tax? Or if you say to Rishi Sunak, how are you going to, get around whatever, they're not so honest. No. So, it swings and roundabouts.
I also think that he probably said that as to try to say quite a boring, neutral thing, or a thing that he thought would be positive. And of course, it is positive. And maybe yet again, the Tory campaign has shown what it always does and takes a bad situation and makes it worse. Because
I mean, I must say the honesty of Mel Stride, who is all over the radio this morning, just basically saying, yep, we've lost, and now it's just managed. We need to manage the amount by which we lose. I mean, that is honesty I've not heard before in a campaign.
No, and the fact that it's a day before, but it started with Grant Shapps 2 weeks ago on this programme doing it, and then it's become more and more. And then Mel Stride today, exactly right, at 7 o'clock this morning, it was a complete abdication, really. We're going to lose, and it's going to be 10 years. And let's talk about the campaign, if we can. It's been 6 weeks, started with the things can only get wetter. We're now 22 hours away from voting. Giles, if you close your eyes and ask to think of one image or one moment from the campaign, what occurs to you?
I've rather blanked it out. I can't remember what campaign. I don't know. I think it was nothing memorable about it at all. At all. But I don't want to say Sunak in the rain looking like he was going to cry because it's too obvious. But the pathetic fallacy of that was too sad. It could not have been made up by the worst romantic poet to have the rain, storm,
and it never got any. It never, ironically, it never did get any better. Is probably the point. So that image became the keynote, but it never really improved, did it?
It never really did, and he looked so sad, and he looked like he was going to cry. And I felt so sorry for him, and I've been so mean to him, and I've been mean about him being short, and I've been mean about him being rich, and I've been mean about him being square and inarticulate and useless and politically. And I'm doing it again, and I mustn't because he's an absolute bonehead, and he must go back to banking. But in that moment with that, I will never forget, and I will always feel slightly sad and want to slightly cry whenever I think of it.
Yeah, and this idea, someone says to us quite often on this programme, the worst thing can happen to a leader is being pitied. It's actually better to be hated than pitied. Jane, close your eyes. What do you think of?
Well, yes, the dissolution of Rishi Sunak. Announcing the dissolution of Parliament was memorable in the extreme. Keir Starmer being accused of being a robot by a member of the public and then sort of stuttering and answering as though he was short-circuiting was memorable. Obviously, the Farage milkshake moment.
Farage generally entering, I presume, actually. Farage being a player in this maybe is another massive factor.
Well, yes. And Ed Davey seemingly taking part in It's a Knockout rather than an election campaign. I mean, the whole thing has just been completely bizarre.
I think that's very fair. Some people have said actually Ed Davey talking about his son as well, though, the caring for his son as a sort of quieter moment of it. But there's definitely been the Ed Davey on a bungee rope, Ed Davey doing Zumba. I think I can't unsee.
You know, it's because you secretly want to do Zumba, isn't it?
God, I don't. But him in his orange T-shirt wiggling his bottom to Zumba, I found well, a little bit much.
Step too far.
Isn't the problem with Ed Davey is because we occasionally have conversations like this, like what's your pick, what's your moment from the thing. Ed Davey's basically gone into this campaign with his ambitions only to appear in this sort of conversation. Everything he's done is to try and create the moment, but it's always looked like the Boris Zipwire moment, and It seems to be that the Lib Dems needed to do something a bit more serious.
Just quickly on the subject of moments, and now I suppose I'm projecting forward to after the election, and we don't think this is going to happen, but Jane and Giles, we talked about pitying people. If Rishi Sunak were to lose his seat, and we don't think that he is going to, would that be just too much? Would your pity, I don't know, would your pity kind of overload at that point, overflow, Jane?
No, I mean, it's the name of the game, isn't it? And again, I mean, when I interviewed him, I said, will you, as Giles said, go off back to banking if you're not Prime Minister anymore? And he said, no, I will, if I'm lucky enough to win my seat, I will very much stay as an active MP. Well, I mean, let's see.
Yeah, how much money?
Giles?
I wouldn't bet on that, I don't think.
Giles, would you feel sorry for him if that happened?
Of course, I still feel sorry for David Mellor, and he was an absolutely terrible individual. I do. I think Steve Twigg felt sorry for David Mellor.
Just full of compassion, Giles. That's your problem.
I am when it's deserved. That sight of Jimmy Goldsmith, sort of the world's most terrible man, sort of clapping and braying and about it. No. I absolutely would feel sorry for him. Although possibly more sorry for him if he wins it and has to go back into Parliament and sit there at the back, barely able to see over the bench of the person in front of him, constantly being cited. Okay.